Hey, this weekend I thought I'd do something a bit different. So a few weeks ago I went to the Stitch Festival in Angel and I got this book. It's called Make It Simple by Tilly Warnes. Most of you will probably know her as Tilly and the Buttons, that's the name of her company, and I will link to her below. So I've got a few books of hers already and her patterns are usually really easy to use, particularly for beginners because I wouldn't consider myself like a pro sewer. But this one's a bit different just because the idea with this book is that these sewing projects can come together in an afternoon. So I've got this idea for the Safiya jumpsuit, which is the one you can see on the front cover here. And what I'm going to do is I want to make it in yellow using these fabrics. And the reason that there is a bit of white and a bit of lace here too is because I want to make a kind of heart-shaped front piece. And the inspiration for that comes from Trixie Mattel's IQ Kitty look, but I guess it's also kind of mixed with a little bit of Funshine Bear and a touch of kind of Lazy Oaf with the collections, which had stuff with the hearts on the front too. So the time is 2:30 and the book estimates that it should take about 3 hours. Like I said, I'm not a pro in terms of sewing and I've also got a dog who's going to definitely keep me behind with the cutting the pattern phase. So let's see if we can get this done by 6 o'clock.
So there's a few things that's important to note before you begin. The first is that if you are me, you are going to need a full pot of tea ready before you start. Now, as you can see, the first thing I'm doing is measuring myself to work out which of the sizes I ought to cut out. My measurements fall between sizes because very few people are industry standards. I'd normally wear a 10 or a 12, but in this pattern it's suggesting I make the 14, which is no problem because vanity sizing is totally pointless. And I'd rather have a garment that is too big than take it in than spend the time working on something that I can't wear. So, because the patterns in this book are printed over each other, you need to make a copy in your size, which is just good practice even if you've got a single pattern. So I've got a roll of tracing paper for exactly this purpose, but even baking parchment or a cheap, thin newspaper will do.
So I don't entirely think that I've used my tracing paper appropriately because obviously on the pattern you can see that there are several lines going over each other, so I should have probably cut out the trouser pieces first before doing the dungaree kind of extension pieces, because now I'm going to have quite a bit of waste tracing paper. But I guess I've learned my lesson.
So what you won't have seen is that prior to today I've washed and ironed my fabrics, and you want to make sure that any fabric that you use before making anything with it, you've washed it to account for shrinkage, because the fabric will shrink and you don't want that to happen after you've made your perfectly fitting garment. So now I'm laying my pattern on the fabric and I'm pinning it on there so I know where to cut. I've tried to be clever with how I've done this so that hopefully I'll have some fabric left for a skirt or maybe even a dress if I'm really slick.
Hey Demon!
When it comes to cutting out, you could use a good pair of scissors or a rotary blade. I got the rotary blade out just to scare my mum and give her a heart attack because the last time I used it on the floor, I pulled it towards my knee, it went right into my knee and I ended up in A&E. So don't use a rotary blade unless you have a nice big table. I don't, so a good pair of scissors will cut fabric just as well. You just need to make sure you don't use them for anything else. As a kid growing up, I was constantly using my mum's fabric scissors for making collages. I used to bloody love a collage. Maybe I'll get back into that again. But it used to drive her mad that I'd use them for cutting paper because it would blunt the blade, something I only understand now that I sew myself.
Okay, so what I'm doing now that you probably can't see is that I am cutting out my interfacing for the back bodice. Now interfacing is this kind of, it kind of stiffens the material a little bit. So for the neckline and for the back facing, which are these little pieces, it needs to be stiffened just a bit so it stands up properly. Now the interfacing that I'm using, you probably can't see all that well, is this stuff, and it's sort of got, this rough side here has got glue on it. So when I iron them in a minute, it's going to mean that it fuses together and creates a nice stiff bit of fabric.
So it may look like I've started sewing my jumpsuit, but actually I'm testing my stitch tension. Don't throw away any scrap fabric because you will need it. I always use fabric that is part of what I'm using to work out stitch tension, which does take me forever because I've never quite worked out how to set the lower thread tension on this machine. It was loaned to me by a neighbour, a very, very kind neighbour, when my well-loved old machine broke last summer. If anyone knows how to sort out the tension on a Brother LS14, let me know. I've checked the instructions, but I'm actually still none the wiser. So as per the instructions in the book, I am constructing the bodice first, followed by the legs. I'd also like to point out that this is absolutely not in any way, shape or form a sponsored post. If anything, this whole video is sponsored by Total Boredom, but I just really like Tilly and the Buttons, so I think it's worth giving her a shout out. Right, so what I'm trying to show you here while singing along to the interrupters is how to construct the crotch. You want one leg facing right side out and one leg facing right side in. You then push one leg through the other, match up the crotch and sew it together.
Hey, so I didn't film quite a bit of what I've been doing with attaching the bodice to the actual trousers. It's looking really big at the moment. I think it's going to need taking in quite a few places. But the reason I couldn't really film is because I spent quite a lot of time sewing and then trying them on and then trying it back on again. So I was in my pants for quite a lot of that. So, you know, I'm sure you understand why I didn't actually film that. It's just come up to 6:30, and I don't mind doing this tomorrow. Like, I never started doing this thinking, if I don't get this done in 3 hours, it's over. I'm gonna carry on with this tomorrow. So at least I've got something to do tomorrow. So be honest, all I really need to do is attach the straps, trim up the seams, and do a little bit of fitting it to myself. And then that's the basic pattern done. But it's the kind of heart bit that I want to add to it that's going to take a bit more time. So I'm going to attach these straps and then I'm going to call it for the day, okay?
Alright, it's day number 2 working on these trousers. I've had my hot cross buns, I've got my endless supply of tea, and Beans the dog is on his walk of the day, so, well, his first of 2 walks of the day. So hopefully I can get some stuff done. I have tried on the overalls so far, and I have to admit they are a bit ill-fitting. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out in the end. Maybe I'll just have to turn it into a bodice or something, or shorten them. I'm not really sure, but we'll see. We're not finished yet, so we'll see. I may even have to attach maybe a bit of elastic to the back so that they fit around my back properly. But I guess we'll see what happens. I'm going to iron them now, just so that we're ready to get working on them again.
So I'm now attaching the facing, and it's a bit fiddly because the straps are in the way. I'm going to give it a final iron once it's all together and get on with creating the Trixie Mattel Care Bears-ish front piece. Rather than using tracing paper, because I already have a heart shape that I'm going to trace around, I'm tracing straight onto the interfacing that I'll be using to strengthen the front piece and use that as the pattern. This isn't going to need to be totally perfect because I'm going to throw lace and decoration all over it anyway, so you won't really be able to see the edges. Getting the heart perfectly aligned and on the front was kind of tough, and it took a few tries even, but I got there in the end.
So here I am in the finished outfit. I hope you can see it all. The front placket bit, I'm actually thinking is really silly now, but I don't know, I feel more like a Care Bear than Trixie Mattel. Maybe in the summer I'll shorten it and turn it into a little play suit, who knows. I don't know, I'm quite happy with it. The only thing that I wish I hadn't done, and this was quite foolish, is that I added some little pleats to the back part, and that's now making it quite difficult to get it on and off. So it's going to be a bit of a squash and a squeeze every time I do that. But I mean, it's not too bad. I'm quite pleased with it. So yeah, that is the finished outfit. And I guess it took, how long did it take? It probably took about 5 hours in total. So about 3 and a bit hours yesterday, and just a little bit of time today to kind of finish off this front bit. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased with those. I definitely recommend getting the Tillian Buttons book that this particular outfit came from. I've also made a t-shirt from there as well. So I don't know, I think are really great patterns. Anyway, I hope that you've had a nice weekend, whatever you've been up to. I am now gonna go and sit in my living room and watch some Disney Plus in my new jumpsuit dungaree thing. So for now, stay cute, be kind, and please subscribe.